Shalom, shalom, shalom. Banyam Yasha'Allah, Banyam Tazadak, Banyam Malak, Banyam Sha'abadiam, Barakatham, Bahashim Yahawah, Bahashim, Hamashiach Yahawashai, Ka Halayim, La Yahawah Tamyad. It's your brother Aklamak, Amath Payath, Mount Zion Reborn Truth Tellers. And this lesson isn't for the moon watchers, the mystics, or men chasing shadows across the sky. This is for those who fear the voice of Yahawah, our power, more than the opinions of men. Because from Egypt to Sinai, the Most High gave Israel a clear 7-day rhythm with 0 lunar instructions. No quarters, no phases, no resets, just commandment. You can run to Amos, you can twist Ezekiel, you can quote Jubilees till your tongue cracks. I'm not leaving TORAH. And if you're not hearing the law, then your prayer is filth. Proverbs 28:9. So let's make it plain. The Lunar Sabbath Doctrine doesn't even survive the Exodus test, much less the TORAH test. So if you believe the Sabbath resets with the moon, you got 2 options. Argue with the Most High in TORAH, or argue with your mama. So all this is on the heel of a spirited debate between 2 camps, believers of the way and the Genesis, which both I have an unbelievable amount of respect for. I deal with Deacon and Hassad more, and I know a lot of people don't really like Genesis, but I don't take Deacon and Hassad like that. You know what I'm saying? To me, even when they get on you, it's funny. You can't take yourself seriously. So, that's cool. I don't care about any of that. Just don't disrespect me. So, and because I demand respect back, I always give it. You know what I'm saying? So when it don't get brought back to me it's spiritual betrayal. And it cuts deep because I approach all my brothers with honor. Not flattery, but a genuine brotherly respect. I call you a mighty warrior in this truth, not because I worship men or need your co-signature. It's because I've been taught to honor my brethren. So you reach out like a man of peace, not to have a debate, but to build, to correct if I need to correct them, and to be corrected if I need to be corrected. But how did Ariella, Amanda, from House of Bread respond? Not like a brother, but like a clamorous woman. So this is my final nail in the coffin on the Lunar Sabbath. And like I said before, it don't survive the TORAH test. That's why you keep running from TORAH to proof it up. This is the book of Exodus chapter 12 verse 2. And this is going to start point for point in TORAH to show you your doctrine is ludicrous. This is the departure from Egypt. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, and it shall be the first month of the year to you. This is the Most High reestablishing his calendar. Okay? He never says nothing about a moon. This has everything to do with the Passover because of what he's about to do to the Egyptians. This is the book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 40 through 43, and it reads, Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. So after the Lord put hands and feet on the Egyptians and slaughtered them, they began to leave. But the key point in these 2 verses is that they spent 430 years in Egypt. That means they were spiritually apart from the Lord and his ordinances. So to believe that they understood the lunar cycles that the Lord created while in Egypt, to believe that, you have to be insane. They were in idolatry for 4 centuries. Get some understanding. You have to deal with this. You cannot put your assumptions on this and make people abide by it. You got to understand you're going to have pushback because of this. Moving on. This is the book of Numbers, chapter 33, verse 3, and it reads, "And they departed from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. And on the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians." So in typical Most High fashion, when he judges the nations and gives his people salvation, he does it in the sight of the heathen, so they know he did it, that it only came by his hand. That's neither here or there. This marks the beginning of Israel's calendar with a direct reset from Yahawah, without a single mention of the moon. He told them, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months." Why? Because in Egyptian timekeeping, it was corrupted and drenched in sun and moon worship. So if you just look up the false gods of Egypt, you will see Ra, Thoth, Khonsu. These gods had to do with the moons that they worshipped. So the first thing the Most High did is to erase that from them. But he never says anything about a moon. And they were being fashioned for his law by his voice. Israel had to be retrained. Yahawah didn't say follow the moon to determine your Sabbaths. He said mark this month and count from there. There was no instruction about moon phases, quarters, or invisible days. Only clarity, only order. Yahawah's reset of time was tied to judgment, not nature. He smote Egypt's firstborn and smote their gods. He was breaking their system, including their calendar. Why would he deliver Israel from Egypt's bondage just to keep them under Egypt's moon god timekeeping? The moon was deified in Egypt. Khonsu, their moon god, was part of the same idolatrous system that Yahawah destroyed. So why would he turn around and make Khonsu's cycle the foundation of Israel's rest? So when the Lord instructed Moses and Aaron, he made it plain, mark this month. Now, not look into the sky, not watch the heavens for quarter moons. Yahawah speaks plainly to his servants. You guys don't want to deal with that. For whatever reason, you want to run out of Torah. But he doesn't require us to track waxing, waning, or invisible lunar shadows to obey the Sabbath. Exodus 12:2 isn't a suggestion, it is a command. This is your beginning. He gave Israel a prophetic clock that began with deliverance, not with a celestial body. This first act of redemption, of salvation and freedom, wasn't moonwatching. It was obedience. The calendar of Israel didn't begin in the sky. It began in obedience to the voice of Yahawah, our power. Moving on. It's going to get bloody from here. So, moving on. Now we're going into the wilderness of sin, and it's the 15th of the second month. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 16, verse 1, and it reads, "And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt." Now, here we go. The first Sabbath in the wilderness of Sin begins 7 days later on the 22nd. But that doesn't automatically mean they knew the moon schedule. That's one of the core problems with this Lunar Sabbath Doctrine. It rests on assumption, not the Lord's instruction. It's claimed simply because the date happens to line up with feasts that are introduced a year later that it must include it being feast being celebrated during this time, when Exodus says nothing about it or nothing about a moon. Timing alone does not equal divine command. Why? They just came out of Egypt. This is the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 14, and it reads, "Put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord." So after 400 years in Egyptian bondage and idol worship, the Israelites did not retain full understanding of Yahawah's calendar. They didn't come out observing a lunar Sabbath system. They had to be retaught the basics from scratch in the wilderness. Now, I brought this up, and this nigga, Amanda, said I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. No, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You were clueless about this. You were clueless about the timeline at all, from the wilderness of sin all the way up to the tabernacle. You're the one that's clueless because you're the teacher. How come you didn't know the timeline? The time from Egypt to the tabernacle wearing up is not a matter of weeks. We're talking about over a year. Over a year. And the first thing Felicia wants to do is leave Torah and go run and tell me what he thinks about Amos 8. So I have no interest in dealing with that man again. He got issues. He's a known bug out. I have no issues in dealing with a man who's been accused of leaving the Feast of Tabernacles to go and kick it with a homosexual. And then he escapes from the community for over a week and never makes account for it. And the only time he basically deleted his page on YouTube. Then he makes an appearance after a week after Darash got online and co-signed for him and capped for him. No disrespect to Darash. You know what I'm saying? So the idea I'm going to listen to this man who I tried to receive as a brother, that's not finna happen. It is what it is. Argue with your mama. Again, so the idea that they were aligned to lunar weeks is highly unlikely unless the Lord himself re-instructed them. But we don't see that instruction explicitly. So there's no command here to observe Sabbaths by moon phases. If the Sabbath were lunar based, this would have been the perfect moment to clarify it to a people relearning righteousness. This is the book of Exodus chapter 16 verse 4 and 5, and it reads, "Then the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." So Yahawah taught them the weekly Sabbath cycle based on 7-day straight pattern, not tied to any celestial observations. There was no mention of the moon, no need to observe its phases, and no command to restart the week at any point. They refused to deal with this. It's all based on the assumption of what they believe Leviticus 23 is saying. There is no tabernacle yet. There isn't even a priesthood. You cannot tie me to those tenets, but you must deal with this. And they refuse. And they refuse and tell you you don't know what the hell you talking about. But you're the one leading Torah. So it was obedience through rhythm, not astronomy. This is the book of Exodus chapter 16, verse 22 through 30. And it came to pass on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And he said unto them, That which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath of the Lord. I'm paraphrasing. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. So this is the first recorded weekly Sabbath enforcement, 1 full month after leaving Egypt. No mention of a moon. I'm sure a new moon happened within that time. Not a single mention about the moon or resting on it. Not a quarter moon, not a half moon, not a so-called transitional day or floating day. Just a repetitive 7-day cycle taught through daily bread, manna being fallen from heavens. So, if the Sabbaths were based on lunar cycles, this would have been the moment for the Lord to say so. Instead, he tests their obedience by repetition, not astronomy. Yahawah says, "How long refuse ye to keep my commandments?" He didn't say how long until you learn the moon phase. This wasn't about sky watching. It was about submission. The Sabbath was about obedience, not calculations. So now we're moving on to the 3rd month. Now, mind you, they're still keeping the Sabbath. Now, mind you, a new moon had to have taken place between the 2nd month in the wilderness of sin and the 3rd month going into Sinai. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 1, and it reads, "In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai." So, by this time, the Israelites had been keeping the weekly Sabbath for over a month straight, and still no new moon instruction. I have to assume they kept it. I have to assume they kept it when there is no command about it till you get to like Numbers 10 or Leviticus 23. But with their model, I'm stupid if I believe that no new moon was being kept here, according to them. No new moon instruction, no reset of the week. The Lord is saying nothing regarding any of this. No celestial recalibration, no extra days between weeks, no lunar warnings or signs, just a perfect 7-day rhythm, week after week. Let that sink in. Over 4 weeks of confirmed Sabbath observance without a single command to follow the moon. You have to deal with this. Not run to Leviticus 23, not leave Torah and go to Amos 8, not go to Ezekiel. You got to stay where the Lord is talking, where he's uttering his voice. Amos didn't live yet. Ezekiel was not alive yet. The only voice they were hearing is the one you should be hearing. So this destroys the idea that the Sabbath was dependent on lunar phases, because if it were, this would be the moment to say so. This is Exodus 19. This is nowhere near Leviticus 23. You can't lump it with Leviticus 23. There isn't a priesthood yet. There isn't a tabernacle yet. They just got into Sinai. I don't know why that's so hard for you. I can see why it's hard for Amanda. But for my guys at Genesis and anybody else who observes the Lunar Sabbath, who I don't have no issues with, I definitely got issues with him, because this is our first interaction, and I can't deal with brothers who can't deal with you like a brother. I even said, let me get it all out and then rebuke, like the scripture says. Hear the matter first, then rebuke. Oh no, not Amanda. He has to show you that estrogen side. It is what it is, and he's been doing that with a lot of brothers. It's just a matter of time for somebody dome check you. And I hope it happens. I hope somebody touch you up. And the reason why is because I don't want the Lord to judge you. I don't want that, because if that happens, it's going to be worse. I don't want the Lord to judge you harshly at all. None of you. None of us. So, moving on. Now they are at Mount Sinai, the mountain of covenant, order, and revelation. If the weekly Sabbath were governed by the moon, then the pattern should have been reset, corrected, or at least acknowledged here. But what does Yahawah do? No change, no pause, no instruction, just continuity. The duration matters, people. From the mid-second month to the third, the Israelites kept the Sabbath as Yahawah instructed, and never once did he say, wait for the new moon, pause your count, start again after conjunction, insert a day of nothingness between weeks. The silence isn't just omission, it's judgment. The Lord gave time for instruction and still chose repetition over recalculation. Moving on. So now we're moving to where the weekly Sabbath is reaffirmed. Now, mind you, I'm just giving you the timeline. Through all this time, they're still keeping the weekly Sabbath based on the fall of manna, falling from heaven for 6 days, and on the seventh day they rest. It's happening week after week after week. That's the whole point of showing you the timeline. Okay? Just keep that in mind, because Amanda couldn't fathom where the timeline was coming from. I couldn't remember the whole timeline because I wasn't in study mode. I just wanted to build with brothers. I didn't even have a Bible open. I had to go and open one just to be a part of the conversation. He was in debate mode, and he wasn't even debating last night. And he turned up. For what? You're amongst your brothers. What are you turned up for? What are you telling me to shut up for? Why is that? Why do you have that on your mind, bro? Why is that on your spirit? I don't need you to teach me. You're not a teacher to me. If I gotta teach you Torah, you're not a teacher to me. It is what it is. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt do no work. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So right here, Yahawah reminds them not of a moon-based schedule, but of a creation-based pattern for 6 days, and rested the seventh. He didn't say watch the moon and then start your count. He says remember the Sabbath. What were they to remember? The only thing they knew about the moon was the moon god in Egypt. So it was imperative for the Lord to tell them about a moon cycle if the Sabbath was based on it, if it was based on a date pertaining to the moon. But what they learned in Exodus 16 was 6 days of work and a seventh day rest. No astronomy, no sky watching, just obedience to the voice, the one you keep ignoring. If Sabbaths were tied to the moon, then Exodus 20 would say every 8th, 15th, 22nd, or in the first of the month, new moon, is the Sabbath. That's what it would say here. It doesn't say it because that wasn't the command. He tied it to creation, not conjunctions. This is the official written law. The official written law of Yahawah pertaining to the Sabbath does not mention a moon. You're adding to the law. That's what you're doing. This is law as is written in Exodus 20. Given by the voice of the Most High himself before all Israel, and it is completely silent on moon phases. If the Sabbath was lunar, the regular weekly Sabbath, its regulation would be stated plainly, just as all his other laws are. Do not commit adultery. You don't have to learn later about a moon tied to that, because it's already Torah law. So you don't hear anything about a moon. Right here on my 10 Commandments plaque, you don't see a moon there, because that's not the command. Moving on. So now we're moving on to the part where I actually touched on last night and just got so rudely, got a rude talking to, like a mama telling their kid to go clean the bedroom. Bro, I'm not dealing with a feminine man. Again, period. I'm not having it. There is no way I'm dealing with you no more. I can forgive you, but you will never speak to me online again. Now, if I see you in person, then we can deal as brothers. Then we will see where all that shut up stuff comes from. We're going to see if that shut up stuff is coming out at that point. We going to see. Now, the Sabbath was given with a death penalty before there was any word in Leviticus spoken. No Leviticus 19, no Leviticus 23, no Leviticus 1. This is the part I touched on the most, but I didn't have a Bible. Like I said, I had to go and search because I wasn't trying to debate or speak with Amanda. I called to speak with Deacon and Hassad. We got history. Whether they think they cut me or I think I cut them, it doesn't matter. We didn't receive each other harshly. You know what I'm saying? They believe what they believe. I believe what I believe. We don't deal with, even if they cut on me, to me, it's funny because I don't take them like that. You know what I'm saying? Not once have they ever disrespected me as a man. And that's all I ask. That's all I ever ask. Because I demand respect because I give it. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. So this is Exodus 31. Verse 14 and 15, and it reads, Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the 7th is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. So by this time, the Sabbath is no longer just a test. Same thing I was saying last night. There's a death penalty attached. It's legally binding under penalty of death. And still, after all these weeks of observance, all this time since the Exodus from Egypt, there's still not a single mention of the moon. Let that sink in. They've been keeping the weekly Sabbath every week. Every week. Still no mention of the moon. This is the point where it's literally etched into physical stone, brought down from Moses. And if you don't keep it correctly, if you defile it, you die. Still no mention of a moon. You have to deal with this. You can't run to Amos. You have to explain why there's no mention of a moon when you can die if you defile the Sabbath. Not just no mention of the moon on the stone itself. I'm talking about no moon from the voice that thundered at Sinai. While they're keeping the Sabbath, the manna's still falling. That's the cycle they remember. They don't remember no stars and no moon. They don't know nothing about it. The only moon they remember is the moon gods of Egypt. which the Lord is trying to extract from their memory. So, and still, after all these weeks of observance, all this time since the Exodus, still not a mention of the moon. The Most High is now issuing a capital judgment for violating the Sabbath, but never once command moon tracking. There's still no Leviticus 23 in sight. There's still no priest yet. No lunar recalculations. No new moon start date. No quarter moon instructions. No day 30 transitions. No astronomical formula at all. No mention of a transitional day. I mean, all the stuff that you keep adding on to Torah without fear, mind you. It's only a matter of time before you get bugged out if you keep thinking you can add on to Torah. Why would you choose these books to add on to? I could see if you add on the Ecclesiastes, maybe Proverbs. Why would you choose Torah law to put your own interpretation onto it? Why would you do that? So again, if you can die for breaking the Sabbath, wouldn't the Father be clear about how to accurately track it? Wouldn't he say something? But he doesn't say. He doesn't say make sure you wait for the new moon before you're starting your next week. He says 6 days shall work be done, and the seventh is the Sabbath. Why is there no margin of error explained if the Sabbath was based on a moving moon? Even if one miscount could lead to death, one minor infraction could lead to death, wouldn't a lunar Sabbath require constant clarification so they can get it right? But there is none. You have to deal with that. Why isn't it? Because that's not how his weeks work. It's not lunar, it's linear. A perpetual cycle established from the foundation of creation, reinforced in the wilderness, and now enforced under divine judgment, all without lunar reference. And not just once, but repeated over and over and over. Now, this is when it starts getting spooky. This is the golden calf incident. Moses went up into the mountains for 40 more days. This is the book of Exodus chapter 24 verse 18. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and got him up on the mount. And Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. That's 40 more days of keeping the Sabbath weekly. Not a single mention of the moon. Still no priesthood. Not a command, not a correction, not a hint, nothing. Another entire month passes, and still the Most High never says, you forgot to restart your week at the new moon. No, you miscounted your Sabbaths. No, you don't have to worry about anything because now we're on a transitional day. No, you're not aligned with the heavenly bodies. Why won't they acknowledge this? I haven't the slightest clue. Why do they keep trying to leave Torah to prop up this nonsense is beyond me. There's no new moon reference, no moon reference at all. It's all assumed under the lunar model. I don't know why you can't get that. So it's over a whole different month now, right? 40 more days. They still keeping the Sabbath, still no moon. This is the book of Exodus chapter 32 verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods which shall go before us. For as this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we would not. What is become of him? So while Moses is up receiving the covenant, the people fall into idolatry. They make the golden calf. They break the covenant. But look closely. Even in their rebellion, there is no correction about the Sabbath calendar. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 34, verse 28. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. That's another 40 days on top of the first. And still no mention of a moon-based Sabbath system being broken or restored. They're still keeping the Sabbath. Never told once to look into the sky. No astronomy. You have to deal with this. You cannot run to a Leviticus 23 that does not exist yet. They have not been taught about a moon. The only moon they knew is the moon god of Egypt, where they spent 400 years in idolatry. If Israel had miscounted the Sabbath during this time, that would have been a serious violation, especially since the Sabbath was already under the death penalty of Exodus 31. Yet Yahawah says nothing about their timing. Why? You have to deal with that. Because their sin was idolatry, not timekeeping. Because the Sabbath cycle is independent of the moon. Because the Most High didn't change his order based on phases. He establishes it based on command, the voice. If the Sabbath depended on the moon, this would have been the moment to say it. During judgment, during covenant renewal, during correction. There's still no moon talk, because the moon has nothing to do with the Sabbath week unless it's a feast day, which is a whole different Sabbath. Moving on. So now we're moving to the time where the tabernacle is erected. This is the first day of the first month of the second year. We got a priesthood, but they have done nothing yet, because there's no tabernacle reared up. They're still building the altar, the golden lampstand, the table of showbread, the Holy of Holies. They're building all that. Now they're rearing it all together, putting it all together yet. So Leviticus 1 is right around the corner. It's not there yet. So you still cannot run to Leviticus 23. I know that's what you want to do. You want to run to Leviticus 23. You want to run to Numbers 10. You want to run to Ezekiel. You want to run to Amos. None of those things are even in existence yet. You have to deal with Exodus. And you can't. That's why we are receiving all this scorn and ridicule. But at the end of the day, it's you that's running from Torah law. You got to deal with running from the voice, not me. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 40, verse 17, and it reads, "And it came to pass in the first month in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up." So first, work is being done on the so-called new moon Sabbath. It's the first day of the month. They'll say, well, it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Very true. It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. However, that understanding was unknown in the wilderness. That understanding came through Yahawah thousands of years later. The Most High didn't command work on the Sabbath because the new moon isn't a Sabbath. Your understanding is just flawed. But I digress. I'm not even worried about the new moon right now. So the tabernacle is reared up. At this point, Israel has now been keeping the Sabbath for nearly a full year. Here is your timeline, Amanda, the one you couldn't understand last night, where you lost your cool and showed your estrogen. Here's your timeline. This is a whole year of Sabbath keeping without a moon, and there's a death penalty attached for violating it. Leviticus 23 cannot be a foundational scripture. If you can't get that, you're just dumb as hell. It is what it is. So at this point, they've been keeping the Sabbath for nearly a full year. And during that time, they've gone through the manna cycle, Exodus 16, the Sinai encounter, Exodus 20, the golden calf incident, Exodus 32 through 34, the tabernacle instructions, Exodus 25 through 31. And still, hundreds of days passed, dozens of Sabbaths, multiple covenantal events. There is still zero mention of a lunar Sabbath. This is no oversight. This is no editing error. This is no forgotten detail. The Most High is the master teacher. He gave them food from heaven. He gave them his law in fire and thunder. He gave them instructions for judgment, mercy, and worship. He gave them everything they needed to obey him, and the moon was never part of it. And if he had intended Israel to track Sabbaths by lunar phases, this year-long boot camp in righteousness from Egypt to the Tabernacle would have been the perfect place to teach it. But he didn't, because that's not how his weekly Sabbaths work. Let the timeline do the speaking, because you don't want to hear it from your brothers. They've now observed the Sabbath for a full calendar year, under miracle, murmuring, judgment, instruction, and restoration, with zero celestial tracking. That's not forgetfulness. That is order, the order from the voice from above. So now we're moving into Leviticus 23, where the Sabbaths and feast are taught. This is where the calendar is officially laid out by divine command, and Yahawah himself distinguishes between what's date-based and what is weekly set apart. This is one of the strongest death blows to the Lunar Sabbath Doctrine, and I've already nailed the foundation. The silence is deafening as it pertains to watching the sky. So now let's sharpen the contrast between the weekly Sabbath and the dated feast, and add scriptural and logical weight to the conclusion. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 1 through 3, and it reads, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feast. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So here the Most High begins to lay out the full calendar of holy convocations. Passover, 14th day of the first month, date-based. Unleavened bread, 15th day. First fruits, Pentecost, trumpets, atonement, tabernacles. Each of these annually feasts is tied to a specific date, counted from the new moon of the month. But before any of those feasts are listed, he starts with the weekly Sabbath, because in order to keep his feast, you had to first master what it is to do on the Sabbath. That's why it's listed there, because it's not the foundation for the Sabbath. You've been misguided. Now, I'm not going to act like the Lunar Sabbath model doesn't require other thinking to put it together, but you missed the whole entire book of Exodus trying to push this on people with ridicule and scorn, like it's something that they're missing. So still, when you look at, I believe it's verse 3, when you look at verse 3, there's no date given. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh is a Sabbath of rest. What Sabbath? The Sabbath they've been keeping for the whole year. You don't have to give it a date. They got it already down packed. They don't have to search in the moon. The whole point was never to be exiled from out of your land and to be put under heathen subjection. They were supposed to be keeping that Sabbath the entire time as they moved into the land. And it was never date based. That's what you guys don't understand. They've been keeping the Sabbath. They never had an instruction to look in the sky. They got the Sabbath down packed now. Now you can add on the feast. That's why you don't see anything about the moon on the stone tablets. So that's it. Not a mention of a moon, no instruction to check the sky, no anchor to the 1st, 8th, 15th, or 22nd. Why? Because the weekly Sabbath is not date dependent. It's not governed by the moon. It's not recalculated each month. It's not interrupted by new moons. It runs on its own rhythm, a perpetual 7-day cycle that traces back to creation itself. The entire point of Leviticus 23 is to give clarity. The Most High makes a clear separation between the weekly and the annual holy days. One is tied to the day of the week, the others to dates of the month. That's plain on tables. It has nothing to do with whether we have a heathen calendar or not. Yes, we're in captivity. We don't have to keep bringing that to the forefront. It's not a desire to want to hold on to the Gregorian. I don't care about a Gregorian calendar. You're not going to keep the law perfectly. In captivity, we're doing rehearsal. That's the whole point, a contrite heart. That's what the Most High is looking for. Yahawah is going to sort out everything when he gets back. That sort of righteousness ain't coming from camps. It's just not. You're not going to get us in perfect order. That's why we have these get-togethers and these builds. No way should it have taken on the contention that it did when it wasn't even a debate. I can take correction. Look, I don't even like being seen. I like to fall in the back. I'm 6'5", 290 on a good day. So I'm not trying to be seen. I got a big man complex. You know what I'm talking about? I don't need to be out on the forefront. And I definitely ain't worried about what some little nigga say. I'm not worried about no man in Israel, no man on the earth, period. And I know I got a temper. That's why I don't click on people unless it's absolutely necessary. And I'm not finna keep going through this with people. You know what I'm saying? After that, when you see me, I'm not gonna have no more words for you. I'm trying to deal with you as brothers. Deal with me as your brother. Rebuke me accordingly. I'll take it. I don't want the Lord to bug me out. You know what I'm saying? But there's no reason for you to handle me like I'm a heathen, or now I'm gonna handle you like one, and you ain't gonna like it. Whatever it's gonna be is whatever it's gonna be, but I'm willing to go through it. But why do it even have to go there? Let's deal in this holiness and get each other straight. That's the whole point. So, moving on. So if the weekly Sabbath was lunar, this chapter would be the place to declare it. And it would plainly say the Sabbath falls on the 1st. The Sabbath falls on the 8th. The Sabbath falls on the 15th. The Sabbath falls on the 22nd. But you don't see that in Leviticus 23. It has to be assumed that it's based on the annual feast days. And it's just not, because that's not the command. So by this time, Israel had been keeping the Sabbath for a full year. They had been judged for disobedience. They had reared up the tabernacle. They heard the law at Mount Sinai, and now they received the feast calendar directly from Yahawah, and still the weekly Sabbath remains completely independent of the moon. That's not a coincidence. That is divine clarity. Why do you want to keep running to Amos, Ezekiel, Jubilees, Enoch, or moon charts when the doctrine can't even survive Exodus? So they'll dig through the prophets, jump to apocalyptic visions, stretch symbolic language, all to defend a doctrine Yahawah never spoke. Not once. But here's the key. They don't actually want to hear his voice, because his voice, as I just shown in this last lesson, it shuts down their doctrine. You have to run away from the voice of the Lord to prop up the lunar Sabbath model. That's why it's retarded. Exodus 16, Yahawah says keep it every 7 days. Exodus 20, Yahawah says remember that Sabbath. Exodus 31, Yahawah said break it and die. And then comes Leviticus 23, where Yahawah separates the weekly Sabbath from the altar, from the lunar feast. And never once did he say count the moon. So why do they? Like I said, they'll leave Torah, the very covenant they claim to keep, to chase man-made charts, Babylonian cycles, and mystic writings. It is absolute madness. And if it's not, I just laid out a timeline, and you're going to have to go into Torah. You can't go to Leviticus 23 when it didn't exist during the year. You have to show the command without Leviticus 23. Ezekiel wasn't there. Amos wasn't there, but Yahawah was in fire, cloud, thunder, and command. And with that, the Lunar Sabbath Doctrine is done. We don't need Enoch. We don't need Jubilees. We don't need temple era priestly rotations, Amos metaphors, or Ezekiel riddles. We stayed in Torah. We stayed in Exodus, primarily from the Passover in Egypt to the erecting of the Tabernacle, from the first manna cycle to the 10 Commandments, from Mount Sinai to the death penalty for breaking a Sabbath they say wasn't even done being written. Not one verse, not one command, not one shadow of instruction tells Israel to track Sabbaths by the sky, by watching for a moon. They can't prove lunar Sabbath using Exodus. It's all guesswork. All they have is guesswork and assumptions because of the 22nd of the second month happened to line up with their lunar model. That's it. One coincidence, and an entire doctrine is built on it. But guess what? Yahawah doesn't operate in guesswork. The law is made plain. So if you break it, his punishments are just because you knew better. He gave a clear pattern, a spoken law, and a repeated test. He never said, watch the moon. He said, remember the Sabbath. And if your doctrine can't stand on Torah, it's not worth standing on at all. And I'm willing to bet your bottom dollar, nobody who believes in the lunar Sabbath will respond to this video and refute the points that I made in Torah. And you want to know why they can't refute it? Because you can't go to Leviticus. You can't even go to Leviticus 1 to refute something that took place in Exodus, because there weren't even a priesthood or instructions pertaining to feast or the altar. And that's the dagger. Why you keep running to instructions pertaining to the feast, the annual feast, and the altar? Because you have to have sacrifices on all the feasts, which means every day counts. Ain't no transitional day. The Most High requires blood every day. There is no transitional day. Even the short mention of it as it pertains to the Day of Atonement, the Most High still required that blood. So it's not like command stop, instruction stop, laws stop, or the manna. The manna falls. He told you it's gonna fall for 6 days. He never said nothing about it pausing in the mid-air of the sky on the so-called transitional day. That is the most retarded thing I've heard thus far. But for whatever reason, it's implied, and I'm just supposed to just believe it because they believe it and can't show it in Torah. But I'm the dummy. I'm the dummy because I'm listening to the voice. But it is what it is. It's called Halayim La Yahawah Tam Yad. It's your brother Ak Lamak, represent Mount Zion Reborn, Amath Payas, nothing but truth tellers over here. And I want to say Shalom, and I hope you are edified.